afternoon, everyone, and welcome to yet another WAS monthly webinar. The title for our webinar today is Celebrating Women at Every Stage, Sexual Health Across the Lifespan. Why are we celebrating women today? Because it is International Women's Day in March, of course. So aligned with that international celebration of women, WAS wanted to pay specific attention to sexual health in women across the lifespan. My name is Renee de Klerk and I am the Executive Director of WAS, and I'm so happy to be with you here this afternoon. The World Association for Sexual Health is dedicated to advancing sexual health, rights, justice, and pleasure for all. Through these webinars, we aim to share knowledge, encourage discussions, and engage with experts worldwide on critical issues affecting sexual health. Before we begin, I am just going to give you a few housekeeping notes. First of all, please share in the chat where you are from, where you are joining us from today, because context is really important. And as I introduce our panel and our speakers as we go along this afternoon, it will become more apparent why it's so important to know where everyone is sitting today. The views shared today are those of the speakers and may not necessarily reflect the official position of WAS. We follow the WAS Sexual Rights Declaration. Our information is evidence-based, inclusive, and culturally sensitive. Captions are available and live translation is available in multiple languages. Please use the preferred language using the interpretation button. And of course, we encourage your engagement. We want you to ask questions. So please use the Q&A button to type your questions in the Q&A box. We'll try to answer them, and as many of them as possible. WAS promotes informed, healthy, and positive sexual behaviors. A recording of the session will be available and shared via the WAS newsletter after the event. And if you are not subscribed to our newsletter yet, please subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you know what's going on in the world of WAS. Stay connected to us and please consider becoming a WAS member. You can join as an individual member or as an organization. Please mark your calendars for World Sexual Health Day 2026, which is celebrated every year on the 4th of September. We will soon launch the theme for World Sexual Health Day 2026. And we can't wait for you to join us in organizing your own event and joining us for World Sexual Health Day. Today I am going to introduce our wonderful panel of speakers, one at a time as they come up. And our first speaker today is our President Faisal. So the reason I mentioned why it's so important to know where you are all joining us from, it is really a privilege today to welcome Faisal. For those of you who are familiar with Faisal, you'll know that he lives and works in Beirut, and currently it is definitely not the most pleasant place to live and work. Unfortunately, we know that it is a conflict-ridden area at the moment, and in his day job, in the WISH program at the American University of Beirut, part of his responsibilities at the moment is so enormous because they are dealing with more than 1 million displaced people. He just mentioned to me before the webinar started that 1 in 5 people are now displaced. And part of his responsibilities as a gynecologist is to set up mobile clinics to assist so many of those displaced people who still require their normal health treatments. And unfortunately, people continue, fortunately and unfortunately, people continue to have to give labor in these really distressing times. So just from the whole WAS community again, Faisal, thank you so much for making it to the webinar. I think the whole audience, really appreciates that you still make time for WAS and the work we do. And good luck with all your responsibilities. We are all rooting for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renee. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the audience and the panelists for being here. Well, we have to do what we have to do. We are all activists. What I'm doing and others are doing are at the core mission and at the core vision and the core values of the World Association of Sexual Health is to protect, to promote the reproductive sexual health of the displaced people, especially women and young girls. This is what we're doing, and this is what we will continue to do because we believe in it, whether this is in Lebanon, in the Middle East, or any other part, or in the same, and you will do the same for all those people in need everywhere. Today I'll be talking about a related matter, which is the sexual health in the menopausal woman, which is at the core of the life course of women. And this is important because the life course approach is more and more now being at the heart of all the global discussions and WHO at WAD or other organizations. And when we talk about the life course, it became incomplete if you're not talking about menopause, among other major things in this life course. And sexual health is an important component in this. So I'll mainly be covering the menopause transition across the life course, its impact on sexuality and why it does impact this, and also the preserving and the promoting of sexuality. I have really nothing much to disclose. I'm on the regional advisory board of the Menopause Academy, trying to promote menopause across the Middle East with the help and support of my friend who is on the panel now, Professor Linda Benyuzi. It's very important to realize first why menopause is such a really specific and important matter. One, because menopause is rare in mammals. As you can imagine, we are the only primate that have menopause and that can live beyond menopause. There is now some types of the chimps and also the killer whales. And you can see here that it is rare. You can see these orange lines showing those mammals that can live beyond the menopause. There is something specific about the biological and the reproductive age. This is the only organ, vital organ, that stops in women and they continue to be alive. Okay? While all the others, they have their biological age and their reproductive age the same. So there should be something peculiar about this, especially nowadays that 40% of women, they spend their life in the menopause. And that's really something very important, making the number in 2030 to be like around 1.5 to 1.7 billion women who are going to be living in the menopause transition. And this is something very important. And across this transition, the concept of menopause as a stage is shaped by a lot of factors, by medication, by the sociocultural aspects, by age, by the hormonal profile, by the attitudes, by the partner, and by the medication being taken impacts in women's life who are crossing menopause, like the struggle at work, okay? Like the social withdrawal that's happening among women transitioning menopause because of the sociocultural effect, because of the impact on sexual health, and sex being off the menu in around 51% of women crossing menopause. Now, this is really a big number, and the partners who are left feeling helpless in around 14%. So we're talking about really big numbers among a very big population on the planet Earth. And this has been shown by a lot of papers coming from our region, coming from the international literature, showing like all of these factors, all of these symptoms that happen during the menopause transition can impact sexual health during the menopause transition. This is one of the milestone studies, like the Empower study, showing that women report a lot of sexual dysfunction, a lot of sexual distress during the menopause transition. Other important also well-referenced studies showing 60% decrease in enjoyment of sexual activity and around 23% that this drop in sexual activity is adversely affecting women's enjoyment of life. And this discomfort, this pain during sex is not only happening in the early days of menopause, it can continue, as you can see, in the second, third, fourth, and fifth year post-menopause. So when people looking at what is specific in the sexual dysfunction that woman is suffering from, it can be across all the domains. It can be in the desire, in the arousal, in the ability to lubricate because of the low hormone, low estrogen during the menopause transition, in the orgasmic experience, and the satisfaction with the sexual events, and also in pain. And that is coming, as I said, from a different paper. This is one of the really solid papers looking at the sexual functioning, and then there is decreased arousal according to the woman in the study, okay, and there is also significant drop in the sexual desire. Other papers coming from different parts of the world, from our region, from Turkey, from Iran, from the Middle East, again women reporting 50% sexual dysfunction, and that is a lot. This is a more recent paper from the president of the International Menopause Society, our friend, Linda's friend, Rosella Napi, again looking at both the impact of sexual satisfaction as in reduced sex-drive depression, and also in conjunction with the impact on the mental well-being, showing an association between the impact of the menopause transition on mental well-being and at the same time on the sexual function. And you can see some of these numbers looking at 53%, they will be less interested in sex, and 71%, they have a positive attitude to maintain sex time. So there is a need for people to stay sexually active, but they need a support, they need more information, more education, and more clinical care in that aspect. And the question is this happening because only of the hormonal aspect of menopause, or is this happening because also menopause is happening over time and there is an aging effect on this? Or it could be both the hormonal and also the aging. This is one of the earlier really good papers looking at what is the cause of these changes that's happening across the menopausal transition, and it was found that sexual responsivity was the only domain of the female sexual function to decline early and continue to decline significantly with both the time, as time passes, the aging, and also the menopause transition. Likewise, partners' problems with sexual performance also increased significantly. So you're not only dealing with the sexual dysfunction of the menopausal woman, but also of the partner, and that is affecting the woman's positive feeling that also her significantly over time and during the menopause transition. There is, of course, very major role for the sex steroids that drop and is affected during the menopause transition. And you can see, for example, the estradiol, a major sex hormone in female, when it goes down, it leads to a lot of behavioral, mental, and also structural and genital impact on the life of the woman. And that has led those authors, we have Susan Davis from Australia, a leading researcher on this, looking at androgenic hormones and aging. And she concluded in this interesting review that estradiol deficiency, which is the estrogen that happens, that can lead to the vaginal atrophy and pain during sex, okay? The deficiency with no independent effect of menopause on androgen levels, although aging is associated with lower androgen, but this level of androgen stays in the normal range, and it's not really, it was not found in this review to be impacting the sexual satisfaction or the sexual function during the menopause transition. There was no link between the female sexual dysfunction and the testosterone level. Another angle discussing this topic is the brain limbic activity in the menopause, which might be related again due to the lower hormone level in this transition. It can impact also sexual arousal, leading to dropping of or decrease of the sexual arousal. The brain, as you can see in these functional MRIs, looking at the activity in the menopausal, the brain of the menopausal woman during transition, and how these affecting the desire and arousal. Another interesting paper looking at estrogen and androgens and showing that they both exert a synergistic, stimulatory effect on female sexual response, and they argue that the testosterone that is circulating at higher concentration than estradiol during both pre and post menopausal years. So really, the argument is there is a strong role for the hormone that will justify later on the hormonal treatment as compared to other factors alone that are also important. And that's why, for example, the trigger of the natural menopause is really the hormonal, especially the drop of the estrogen levels. However, what is triggered by age is the androgens, and DHEA, another famous androgen that are secreted by the adrenal glands, and this declines despite a production in the ovary, but this production in the ovary is not able to correct the deficit caused by the aging effect. There are signs and symptoms that you see in women transitioning menopause that are related to drop in the androgen level and affecting all the domains of female sexual function, in addition to mental health like headaches, depression, and insomnia. So the argument continues that there is a role for androgens that are dropping and they're not compensating for, and there is a need for this. There are 2 times the risk of developing a low desire as lower total and free testosterone levels drop during the menopause transition. So with this in the background, with the role of hormones, with the role of the brain function and performance during the menopause, with the role of other factors like the sociocultural and the partner and the age, how do we assess this? Definitely, assessment needs, of course, a provision of care. Doctors need to be really highly retrained again on the approach to menopause, which is very important. A modern way of looking at it is using a biopsychosocial model, and this model looks at the biological, psychological, sociocultural, and interpersonal approach based on many of the scales that you use in the menopause clinic. So you can capture all the aspects of the menopausal transition. Factors that possibly affecting sexual function in menopause, as we have said, are all within the biopsychosocial model. Some of them are predisposing, some are precipitating, and some are maintaining factors that you have to look at. Again, within the biopsychosocial model, these are the predisposing factors, can be biological, can be also contextual, same thing for the precipitating factors, like age, like relationship, like stressors, and same thing for the maintaining factors that are related to self-esteem, confidence, lack of access to care, and interpersonal conflicts. Another important thing to consider in the assessment of the menopause is the genital syndrome of menopause that have a lot of impact on the urinary system, on the genital structure and physiology, and also on the sexual response related to this. I will finish by really advising everyone to read this beautiful article by my friend Linda and colleagues and Elisa Mazzaroli, who are very close friends of the World Association of Sexual Health, and of course the paper by the Emmanuel Giannini and Rosella Nafi on the couple pose, talking about the treatment of dysfunction during menopause transition that's not only posing on men's health, but also posing on the couple's life and other aspects. And again, using the biopsychosocial model, the paper invites us to take a thorough history during the clinical encounter, to look at the psychological dimension and have another deep history and deep look into this, and assess the socio-cultural aspects like the social support, access to care, gender equality issues, and also to look at the relational aspects within the couple and the quality of the relation. And then there are 4 levels of intervention that can start with education, counseling, non-pharmacologic therapy, non-hormonal local treatment, and then go for local hormonal treatment and oral systemic therapy. And most of these treatments have shown really a positive impact on the woman's life. So the most important thing is to position menopause strongly across the menopause, understand all the factors that shape and reshape women's experiences, and be able to provide for those women an access to quality services that have levels of psychoeducation, counseling, and pharmacologic, non-pharmacologic treatment. And I thank you very much. This is where I am now. I'm in this building, and I salute you all. And that's our WISH program that are now busy helping with the displaced people, as Renee said. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you for the panelists. And I'll be able to stay for a bit, but I might leave at any time, so you have to excuse me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Faisal, for that extremely interesting presentation. You already have a question in the Q&A box, which I will give to you now. I just want to say that I really hope that I won't become part of the statistics one day. I definitely don't want to be part of the 51% that you mentioned, but luckily, being surrounded by wonderful doctors like yourself and one of our other speakers, Alna, I know that I am in very good hands, and hopefully I won't become part of the statistics. So the first question to you is from Sabrina in Mauritius. She's asking, why is the prescription of testosterone of women still problematic?
Well, Lena, for the question, in many places it is not approved. In the US, there is no FDA approval. It's used off-label because in Europe, for example, I'm sure Linda will be talking about this. There is in many places that testosterone is being prescribed. I the question is related to one, there is no yet a close, solid link between the menopause transition and the role of the androgens. Because if you measure androgens during menopause transition, they're still going to be in the normal range. Okay? And there is also a fear of abuse of prescribing this in the perimenopause or just before menopause. And the third thing has to do with the side effects. That has to do with the abuse of this, and then the side effects that can result, that can impact liver, and that can impact all the androgenic manifestation, from acne to excessive hair to other issues, to hyperlipidemia that can happen. So all these matters, but basically the lack of the solid evidence for a link is really putting some countries, some agencies to wait for an hesitation of going ahead and approving the use of testosterone.
Thank you, Faisal. Another question is just for you, whether people might have your slides. So people are requesting for you to share your slides. I don't know if that is possible, or if you have copyright on it.
I promise to share a copy. I'll make a copy for sharing, definitely. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much
But
for being so generous.
So I have to make it, I use a lot of animation. So I will make one to share.
Thank you. Just another question that just came in. What role do non-hormonal interventions play in preserving sexual health during menopause? And how do they compare to hormonal approaches? And that is a question from Leah.
How the non-hormones compares to hormones approach? That's the question. How non-hormonal compared to hormonal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, this is based on the new philosophy of personalized care in menopause. So you have this wide range of symptoms that can be moderate or severe that women can come up with. Some women, they pass menopause without any complaint. They're not bothered. Some of them are bothered. So you have to really deal with what's bothering women and take this very seriously and deal with it. So if you're talking about certain aspects that are very common, which is the vasomotor symptoms and the hot flashes, there are a lot of non-hormonal good treatment for this. If you're talking about the sexual health resulting from the domain of pain, then there is a lot of non-hormonal that can work. If you're talking about the domain of desire, again, there is this famous flibanserin that have shown really impact on the issue of desire, or Valisi, the new one, and these act on the receptors, serotonin and dopamine receptors in the brain. So it depends what exactly are you addressing. The hormonal one can work very well, the non-hormonal can work very well. But then if you're thinking about the oral treatment of estrogen progestin, this again has been shown to be very effective if you are aiming to really address all the aspects around menopausal transition that are bothering and affecting women. So the good thing is we have a wide array of options that we can use, and most of them have been approved. Both of them have a lot of evidence in phase 2, phase 3 trials that are really very effective. In places, non-hormonal can work very well. In other situations, you need the hormonal in order to reduce or eliminate suffering of women at this stage.
Thank you so much, Faisal. I can see that our audience is just hanging on your lips at the moment. But unfortunately, we need to now introduce our wonderful next speaker, and that is Linda Vinyasi. I'm also a very good friend of Faisal. Linda is a full professor of endocrinology at the University of Florence, and she's also the president of the International Society of the Study of Women's Sexual Health. We talk about ISWISH.
Just immediate past president.
that
the
correction.
present.
Thank you, Linda. I am going to let Linda go ahead, and she's going to talk about reproductive health with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Linda. We really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. So actually, we will provide some new data on reproductive hormones and sexual health, the focus on health, and started with research to describe the new data coming from our university that created for arguments in women. Actually, this is my disclosure. This is also my very important knowledge of all the staff that work with me in University of Florence and provide any efforts to try to project these paradigms. So we are changing the story of women health because we are understanding that it's not true that men are made of testosterone, female are made only by estrogen, but we are actually demonstrating a very important roles for androgens in women. So androgens are important hormones deriving from reproductive organ, and such as the ovary, and but not produced by the ovary, also produced by the adrenal gland. And having said that, we can easily demonstrate that testosterone is more represented in the blood cells of women than the estrogen. This means that testosterone is around 0.5 or 3 nanomolar, the normal range, and the upper range, and is also dramatically higher than what we know from estradiol levels. Estradiol is reached this level only during ovulation, and this means that testosterone is roughly higher during the months after to the of estrogen. And indeed, which are the roles for testosterone in women? Actually, we are demonstrating testosterone as a pivotal role, very in shaping the brain. And this shaping starts during adolescence. So during adolescence, we are always concerned about the development of genital and also the secondary sexual characteristics. Actually, we always forget that during adolescence, during puberty, one of the most important organs that are developing is the brain. Brain in male adolescent start to grow and remodels in some way, and this remodeling is different in men and women. Actually, in boys, we have a most development of all the area, the brain area dedicated to visuospatial. This development is under testosterone regulation, while in girls we observe again under testosterone regulation. We observe an increase of all the cortex of the brain regions that are more dedicated to language, regulation of sensation seeking, risk taking, and pregnancy. So of female are more regulatory than the male one, and this is one of the reasons why the pediatrician or neuropsychiatrist of the childhood think that male are more afraid and more prone to have risky behaviors during adolescence as compared to higher order content brain area play a pivotal role in sexual health. And indeed, this connection between the limbic system that is more related to emotional process to be motivated in some way by the higher order cognitive brain areas such as the prefrontal cortex. This connection starts during puberty and is maintained also during adulthood. Why I'm talking about this brain area here, talking about testosterone? Because it has been demonstrated that this area, which is highly regulatory, so the prefrontal cortex is able to encode in some way our inner model for emotional inference. It means that it's able to regulate emotional process. It means that it's also able to limit the emotional process in some way. And this is why when we have the more pronounced activity of the prefrontal cortex, we have a regulation of desire, which instead emerge when these prefrontal cortex start to a little bit slow down its activity. And so, having said that, we can conclude that desire is the integration between the external inputs that are in some way and driven by the limbic system to some internal ones, and then this integration is regulated by the prefrontal cortex, and then finally the desire can emerge. And we demonstrate that testosterone is actively regulating this emergence of desire. So this is a meta-analysis showing that the lower testosterone level is associated to increased sexual dysfunction in both premenopausal and postmenopausal women. Total testosterone level is more linked to desire domain defect. So this means that testosterone is actually modulating in more tight way desire domain. And testosterone is active in the brain. These are data coming from our programs showing that testosterone is able to modulate by acting toward androgen receptor, the brain area. So testosterone is not converted into estradiol, exerting a modulation of desire, but is a direct activity of testosterone on the brain by acting on androgen receptor. So it's a pure androgenic effect modulating sexual desire. And indeed, this very important meta-analysis by Susan Davis demonstrated that testosterone is able to modulate, testosterone therapy is able to improve sexual desire domain with any significant adverse effect when used in a proper way. And we lean forward in this try to disentangle the role of testosterone in the brain and on sexual desire. We must say that testosterone was mainly able to modulate the excitatory pathway. Indeed, if we think that sexual stimulation can induce sexual desire in this dual mode by reducing inhibition and improving excitation, and this the higher activity of the excitatory pathway is that one linked to sexual desire. We demonstrated, it has been demonstrated also that testosterone is actually able to reduce amygdala prefrontal cortex coupling. So this means that amygdala, which is the limbic system, the emotional brain, is able to have a more pronounced activity whenever testosterone because testosterone is able to in some way disconnect and decouple the amygdala from the orbitofrontal prefrontal cortex. This made in premenopausal women with a very high testosterone women perceive angry faces as less threatening, and suggesting that testosterone might mitigate fear responses, so be more um, more prone to have social interactions. And testosterone administration women also mitigate fear response. So this means that testosterone can exert this effect to be more socially active. And indeed, in this study coming from our university, we demonstrated that the lower the testosterone level, the lower the sexual excitatory pathway was there, and the lower the level of excitatory pathway, the higher the response to testosterone treatment through sexual desire. So this means we could have in some way the possibility also to, and which is right, have the highest improvement of the sexual desire by using testosterone treatment. So in some way tailoring the testosterone treatment or sexual desire treatment in women. And testosterone is also an important hormone not only in the brain, but is modulating in some way reproduction and sexual health by acting in the receptors in the clitoris and the vaginal tissue, which are full of androgen receptors. And in the clitoris is very similar to penis. They share exactly the same molecular mechanism that are the relaxant pathway and modulating contractile pathway in this vascular district. And this means that we have exactly the same molecular mechanism that could be regulated by testosterone as we observe in the male counterpart. So indeed we demonstrated that also the clitoris is modulating all the nitric oxide pathway, which is important for having increased vasocongestion in the genitals, could be improved by testosterone administration. So testosterone is acting in this very important relaxant pathway. These were animal studies. We also performed demonstrating that the systemic transdermal testosterone in women is able to improve and to increase the peak systolic velocity of clitoral artery and measured by the color Doppler ultrasound of the clitoral artery. After 6 months of treatment, we observed such an improvement. So there is a small observational prospective pilot study which support our view that testosterone is able to act on the genitals. Then we have also the vagina, which is very importantly regulated by testosterone, not only the clitoris, and we demonstrated testosterone is produced by vaginal tissue. So vaginal tissue is an endocrine organ which is able to convert DHEA coming from the blood and coming from reproductive glands, for example, the ovary, but also the adrenal gland, and reaching the vagina is able to be converted by the enzyme present in the vagina into testosterone and DHT. And indeed, this means that testosterone in vagina, we perform a lot of studies and we publish a lot demonstrating that testosterone has a biological role in vagina. So vagina is able to produce its own androgens because they need androgens to maintain a relaxant contractile capacity, but also to modulate inflammation in the vagina and also to modulate pain. So our last research demonstrated that testosterone and androgens are able to reduce the activity of pain receptor in the vagina. So actually we are demonstrating that testosterone has a biological role, a physiological role in genitals in women, and not only in the brain, but also in the genitals. And it's the physiology. So this means that ovary, which is a reproductive hormone, is important to continue to produce testosterone during a lot of years during women's life. And so we should be aware that most probably we have to study more and more the effect of androgens in the physiological level. So actually our society, the International Society of the Study of Human Sexual Health, did this very important consensus panel review demonstrating all the role of vaginal DHEA or vaginal testosterone for the treatment of GSM. So actually our studies revealed the role of androgens in women and mainly testosterone. So we are writing a new and a great piece of women's physiology, which is completely new because for a lot of years we only studied the effect of estrogen and progesterone in women, and we destroyed in a review that menopause is the only matter in women. We have a very important hormonal alteration that could occur during the woman's life, and we open to new fields of investigation because we have to be honest, we do not know all the effect of this hormone in women, so we should study more and more to have an open new and future therapeutic application for testosterone in women. So thank you very much for inviting me here, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you. So the rest of the questions we will take at the end of the session, if that is still okay with you. Now I will introduce.
I'm actually, I have to turn back to another congress here in Florence, so it was why I was a little bit in delay. So
okay.
If you want, I can respond to.
I'm just going to quickly check the yes, there is a specific question for you, if you would like to answer that. Can testosterone administration be the treatment type for clients, especially with breast cancer?
So actually we are not in this phase because testosterone is actually always in different organs converted to estradiol, so we need to be very cautious in the treatment with testosterone because we need to always have in mind that it can be converted to estradiol. So if a woman has a contraindication to have estrogen treatment, cannot also have testosterone treatment for this reason. But actually, if we consider that testosterone could be provided women with aromatase and aromatase inhibitor treatment for breast cancer, there are some clinical trials demonstrating that there are much benefits in these women in terms of sexual function. But there are more trials, so we need to investigate more.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you for joining us. We understand how busy you are and that you might have to leave now, but we appreciate, and I can just see from everybody that they would really also like to have your slides if you are willing to share that. We'll really appreciate it. Thank you. I am now going to move. Thank you. I'm now going to move on to our next speaker, my dear friend Alna Rudolph. She is also our immediate past president in WAS, so everybody knows Alna, who's here today. She is not only the immediate past president of WAS, but she's also the clinical head of My Sexual Health and the director of the African Institute for Sexual and Gender Health. Please, Alna is going to speak to us about infertility today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renee. You know, I am here today not only as a clinician and as the past president of this organization, but certainly also as a person with lived experience. And I think that is why I was asked to do this presentation. I'm not a fertility specialist, but in sexual health, you work with fertility and infertility all the time. Personally, I have undergone 10 fertility treatments, and I stand here as one of the fortunate ones. I do have 2 children, but that is not everybody's story. And that is why infertility is not only a medical condition, it is a matter of rights, justice, and dignity. So the WHO recently published this wonderful guideline on infertility, and I can really encourage everybody on this webinar to download it. After my talk, I will share the specific link to it. It's free to download. I think it's an excellent training tool. I think every single healthcare provider on this planet should see this, should read this, and to make it their own. It's very practical, and it talks about prevention, diagnosis, and treatment, and then also alludes to the rights and the justice issues. And of course, WAS is here to bring the sexual into that. There is no, you cannot leave sexual out of the sexual and reproductive health and rights. So, infertility is commonly defined. There are a few different definitions, but the inability to conceive after 1 year. And it affects 1 in 6 people. It's not rare, it's not a niche, and it's a global public health issue that affects people from all populations all over the globe. And today's webinar is a female sexual health webinar, but there are also a lot of fertility cases that's caused mainly just by the males, and some by both males and females, and resulting in up to 45% of infertility cases having men involved in it. And it plays a big role in how we see fertility and infertility and the childless couple globally, because much of the stigma certainly still comes down to the women. It is more than biology. It is really an issue of grief and stigma and relationship strain and tremendous financial burden, to the point that the deep urge of a person to have a child can cause complete financial ruin that can put that family into serious trouble, affect their family's health in general and their livelihood. So therefore there's a big onus on governments to assist with this kind of treatment. And the grief that goes with this goes without recognition, and the psychological support that's necessary for a person or a couple that goes through infertility is complicated, believe me, because you as the infertile person don't always know what's the correct way for people to react to you. Should they show pity? Should they show interest? Should they just ignore the fact? I always said that falling pregnant is like falling in love to many people. It just happens so easily and spontaneously, but for those of us who didn't fall pregnant easily, it's just like normal falling. It's painful, seriously painful, and sometimes there's no visible wound, and sometimes it's just this gaping, festering wound, and it is complicated to support people through that as well. So I asked AI, to generate a slide for me as the presentation, and then it came up with this thing, and I thought, oh my goodness, no, that's way too sad. But that's the reality of infertility, that deep sadness, that absolute loss of hope is something that often accompanies our patients. So actually fertility is a right. It's not only a personal ideal. If you look at the World Sexual Health Declaration on Sexual Rights, it states that every person has the right to decide whether and when to have children, to found a family, and to access the means to do so. So when infertility care is inaccessible, this becomes a violation of fundamental sexual and reproductive health and rights. And fertility and reproduction is also not an obligation. So what people always also complain about is that if you hit your 30s and you don't have a child yet, there's family members and other people that start to put pressure on you to have this child. So it's not an obligation. And not all childlessness is due to infertility, because some childlessness might be because that marriage is actually unconsummated. They've never been able to have sex. There's significant sexual dysfunction. They might have consummated, but there is such severe pain that they cannot have regular sex. It might be due to pregnancy loss. They might be falling pregnant frequently but lose those pregnancies. It might be because it looks like a man and a woman, but there are two uteruses there. Or there's no uterus there if there is gender diversity in that couple. Or just a gay couple who cannot have children purely due to the biological limitations in their bodies. And there's many, many other reasons why childlessness isn't necessarily infertility. And not all infertility necessarily results in childlessness. So people can form families in other ways. And just making this biomedical thing with this massive amount of pressure of producing a child from your own body with your own biological material puts a lot of pressure on people, and that it also needs to be taken into account. And it is a justice issue. Access to fertility is unequal. So one would think, is it poor people that don't fall pregnant, or is it wealthy people that don't fall pregnant? But the reality is, infertility in itself doesn't discriminate. It's more or less the same. But the problem is, if you look at this map of the global south, this is now, if you look at those big circles, that is if there are 48 fertility clinics per 10 million people in that area. And there's another similar map from this particular paper that shows the amount of infertile people in regions also differ slightly. So then this map changes a little bit. But as you can see, the global north, there's quite a lot of fertility treatment access to it. But if you look at this map, it is really scary to think of how few fertility treatment centers there are in these regions. And if you think that this affects 1 in 6 people. So if you look at this document from WHO that I referred to earlier, infertility it's not only about male factors, female factors. This is how you treat it. It is really about the right to health as all, and the right to health, and that everyone has the right to enjoy the highest attainable standard of physical, mental, and social well-being. And if founding a family is part of that, then yes, that's a right. The right to enjoy the benefits of scientific progress and its applications. So if you live in a country where you do not have access to this kind of treatment, or this kind of treatment is only possible if you spend 5 times an annual minimum wage income on one treatment, because that's the reality that we have often in the global south, then you don't have that right to the access to benefit the scientific progress. And it should be a primary healthcare issue. It should be addressed in every single primary healthcare clinic out there. If you look at how simple WHO put these guidelines, it's actually really possible that every nurse in every clinic, in every pharmacy, and even school teachers need to educate about it in a primary sense, and that we should not leave this only to specialists. We all need to generate a form of financial protection for patients, as I explained earlier. It's a gender equality issue. Women are disproportionately affected by the consequence of infertility, and addressing infertility is relevant to gender equality. And the universal health coverage, this is what WHO is pushing for very strongly, to make sure that we do get our governments to include this in basic healthcare, and then equitable access to healthcare. So, sexual justice requires that all people have equitable access to care and the autonomy to make their own decisions. health systems in effect decide who gets to become pregnant. And this is not only inequality, it is reproductive injustice. Sexual pleasure is an issue. The WAD sexual Declaration on Sexual Pleasure reminds us that sexuality is about more than reproduction. And often in the couple that struggles to conceive, sex changes from pleasure to pressure. And that can have quite a significant impact on people. Sex becomes, needs to be done on a specific schedule. It needs to be, it's something very clinical. You know, the doctor gets involved into the when, where, what, how. There's tubes and bottles and injections and everything involved in that, and that can have a significant impact on the intimacy. The intimacy suffers from that, and infertility is therefore not only a reproductive issue, but very, very much a sexual health issue and therefore a sexual justice issue as well. So if you look at the WHO principles of this care, this is now a super condensed version of those principles, but it is that it should be person-centered, that there should be equity and access, should be evidence-based treatments. People are also super vulnerable to the marketing of all kinds of shenanigans when it comes to fertility treatment, because people are so desperate to have children. They fall prey to non-evidence-based treatments that's often marketed directly to them, and then also the psychological support. Now, if you look at this slide, it does not look like this is something that can be addressed by just a primary care provider. But actually, if we take an hour and we sit primary care providers down in a group and we teach them how to follow this slide, it is super easy. And many of these things can be done in primary care. The basic counseling, the lifestyle advice, as well as the primary blood tests can all be done in primary care. And you can get quite far with that. But then, inevitably, there are those things that need to happen in a more specialist setup, and people should have access to that. So that's for female factor infertility, and this is for male factor infertility. So if we look at a positive sexology perspective at infertility, we have to keep on acknowledging that sexuality is not just reproduction, and that intimacy can be preserved, and that pleasure remains possible, and that identity is not defined by fertility, and that there are diverse pathways to meaning and to family. I'm always surprised because I work so closely here in South Africa. We've got excellent medical systems in private, and we've got multiple fertility clinics, and so often I see people that have gone through multiple fertility treatments, and in the meantime there's such basic sexual health issues, there's significant relationship issues, their psychological health has suffered dramatically, and that is not addressed. There are those clinics who really try their best to address that, but it often results in a lot of the stress and pressure that then also contributes to some of the infertility. It's very important that we of course have to have LGBTQIA friendly options and inclusive fertility care for all. Of course, in countries where we do not have the legislation in place that makes it possible for people to freely express their sexual orientation or their gender identity, of course they won't have access to fertility care then, and that is something that WAD strongly opposes, and that we will continue to support WHO and our other partners to fight for. And then prevention and early intervention, that is, the reality is, if you look at that map of the global south, this is almost all the only place where we will be able to focus attention on. Our attention needs to be focused at the prevention of STIs, at the lifestyle factors that can affect fertility, and fertility awareness and early referral, because there are just a few things that happen now. People are having their careers first, and they only desire fertility later. And if there's education about the decline in fertility with age, people might, and if there's support from governments and from institutions to encourage women to exit their careers, have their children, and easily then integrate back into those careers, we will have less infertility later in life. I was very surprised when at FIGO late last year, there is also on the other side a massive worry about the fact that people are having fewer children, that people are actually encouraging fertility. The problems in different areas in the world are different, but the education remains very important. So the reality is that there's limited access to treatment, there's massive cost barriers, there's geographical inequity, and biology limits some, but systems limit many more. So I will share with you my story of my 10 treatments and 2 children, but I'm going to have to keep it very clinical because otherwise it always makes me cry. So I remember very clearly the trying to have a baby. I'm a doctor and I thought I'm first going to specialize and then I'm going to have my children, and then just all of a sudden my husband and I decided, no, let's just have children now. And you start trying, and that first time that you're not pregnant when you were trying at the right time, that was actually the worst time for me. And then after that it happens hundreds of times over many years that you hope and you feel that you've done absolutely everything right, and it still didn't happen. And you start with the most basic treatments, the affordable ones, and then later on you take the money that was at that time, even what a junior doctor was earning in South Africa for a year, the fertility treatment was costing, one treatment was costing more or less what a doctor earns in a year if you go for the in vitro fertilizations and that, the junior doctors in South Africa. So, and then not to mention the cost of all of this emotional investment in this, and the guilt and the shame for not meeting the expectations. And I realized eventually that this also became my sexual justice issue, because in the process I did lose my husband, and I ended up donating some of the embryos that I had with my first husband, and then married a husband that you see on the screen here now that's older, and right from the start they said to us, no, it's impossible, you cannot fall pregnant, and we will need to go for ICSI immediately. And then many surgeries, many surgeries later, I had these 2 beautiful daughters naturally. So I speak here on behalf, from the deep privilege that I've had to be able to access the treatments, but also then to have these children. And on behalf of all of those who have done everything right and for whom it's not working. Okay, there I get to the cry part here, but more so for those who cannot even dream of the treatments, who live in an area where it's not even possible to dream of the treatment. So that's what WAD is here for. Okay, so it must change. We must change access, we must change awareness, we must change equity, because everyone deserves a chance. Thank you.
Sure. Now, I'm almost also crying, so let's just... And unfortunately, there is so much to cry about in the world at the moment. And now I'm going to introduce our lovely young speaker. So let me just quickly share how Libeth came across our path. Her colleague actually spoke in one of our previous webinars, and we were so impressed by their engagement that we wanted to bring them onto one of our webinars again. But unfortunately, her colleague could not come today, but then said to us, beautiful Libeth, who's joining us today from Teenagizer. I'm going to just read you her introduction, or her profile actually. She's a young activist and training and youth internship coordinator at a charitable organization, Union of Adolescents and Youth, and also Teenagizer. So since 2021, Libeth has been actively engaged in civic volunteering with Teenagizers, serving as her entry point into this field. And over the years, she has grown from an adolescent activist into a young professional and an integral member of the Teenagizer team. Libeth works directly with adolescents and young people and has extensive experience in delivering sexual and reproductive health training for diverse youth audiences, both online and offline. Within her role at Teenagizer, she has coordinated more than 550 training sessions on mental health, sexual and reproductive health, and HIV, reaching over 11,500 adolescents and young people across Ukraine, once again emphasizing the context where people are from. And I was so astonished that, even within your very difficult circumstances, also coming from a conflict-ridden area, you still do this wonderful work, just as Faisal. And on that note, I would also like to remind our audience of the WAD statement on sexual rights in times of war. So please, share your thoughts with us, of course, on adolescence and that part of a woman's life.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm almost crying right now. Yeah. My name is Lubov, and I represent Teenagizer, a youth-led organization working with adolescents across Ukraine. We are from Ukraine, and thank you for mentioning our full-scale war right now, because it's different and hard times for us, and thank you so much for it. Okay, so for millions of young people, sexual health is not a choice, it's a question. They are left alone with no answers, sometimes no support at all, and no spaces where you can talk safely about it. So this is why our work here exists. We have been working since the year 2015 with young people, and everything we do is created by young people for young people, and it is very important. This matters because we are not speaking about youth, we are youth by ourselves, and we can know what we need from within the same realities. Here is our Yana Panfilova, our founder, yeah. And for many teenagers, Teenagizer become not just an ordinary organization, it becomes a safe space where you can talk about anything, and often the first place where they can ask questions safely without any fear or some kind of shame. And our first direction, that every month up to 5,000 young people reach out to us to have this psychological help from our peer-to-peer consultants. Now in our team there are almost 300 students, psychologists, and they help our youth, our teenagers to deal with this harsh reality. After the year 2022, this number has increased, obviously, and because in crisis, the need for support does not decrease, it grows. And so we work, and each month we help up to 5,000 young people, and yeah, that's our work. And young people comes with different concerns, mental health, relationships, identity, but very often sexual health. And these topics are deeply connected, not just separated from each other. Our second direction is to connect and unite the youth, and we work also in Ukraine. We are from Ukraine, and also we have our teams in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan, and we have internship there, so young people can join us and create these safe spaces with us. Our work is peer-to-peer. Trust comes from shared experience, and we have these trainings. You can join them and know everything about mental health, about HIV, about sexual health, and we create these safe spaces also for teenagers living with HIV, where they can meet, support each other, and have this support where they cannot have anywhere else. And today in our team there are almost 430 active teenagers that help us. It's our consultants, our activists, and young people who want these changes to come in Ukraine. And another numbers. So far we have conducted over 796 trainings, and now this number is even higher. And we provided these trainings to 25,300 teenagers, and now this number is even higher, and more than 4,000 teenagers they take places in our different events like Vilvechirka, where they can speak about HIV, about prevention, and test themselves. And our third direction is presenting the voice of youth in the processes of policy formation. We stand up for the rights of teens and convey their voice because we are part of key initiatives and coalitions at the different levels, and it is very important. So maybe if some of you can support us, we would love to have this support from you. Okay, and now I want to focus on sexual and reproductive health literacy and what we actually observe in our practice. So more numbers here. We have different internships, and almost, not 100%, but more than 99% of applications came from girls in schools and formal educational systems. Participation is usually balanced between girls and boys, but it's only because these events are, they need to be there. But if we have trainings in open access workshops, almost 80 and more percent are girls. And yes, here is your researchers. So here is the key insight that girls tend to actively seek knowledge, but boys do it less voluntarily. We also have different trainings in rural areas, so our activists work not only in big cities, but also in villages and small communities. And here we deal with more different barriers and different challenges. For example, strong social visibility that everyone knows everyone, strong influence of religion, and fear of judgment from parents and the community. And as a result, teenagers often feel embarrassed to ask questions about important topics, for example, sexual health, avoid open discussions about sexual health, and have lower awareness of contraception. And here is some not so good evidence of it. Even in schools, we face different barriers. For example, some schools require us to separate stations for girls and boys, and it's I think you can know that it's bad because it's created this barrier and stigma and this shame. And some schools even refuse sexual health trainings entirely due to fear of complaints from parents, and we have that complaints that parents are just afraid that it's not what children need to know from school. Also, many teenagers arrive at our trainings already having some information, but mostly this information came from social media, internet, TV series, and worst of all, pornography, and some kind of peer discussions. And these sources often romanticizes aggressive behavior, even different unequal power dynamics in relationship, where pressure or dominance or even violence is something normal. Outside Ukraine, we have this very difficult and horrifying quotes, "Move China знак свободы," which means silence means consent, and it is very dangerous because consent must be clear, active, and freely given. From what we observe, girls understand this concept more often, but boys are less likely to follow it consistently. And also on our trainings, we address this directly. We teach consent culture, we correct this misinformation, and also we create inclusive spaces, including for LGBTQ communities, for young people and allies. And lastly, talking about emergency contraception, we know that almost no one heard about this emergency contraception, and almost 121 million unintended pregnancies occur worldwide every year. So if like more people and girls in particular know about this emergency contraception, this could be prevented. And I would like you to stay in touch with us. Maybe you can join our social medias. We talk about different cases, different topics that young people find interesting and most of all important. And also, I think we can share this presentation with you, and you can click everywhere and go to our websites, and here you can have our free consultations. So maybe if you have your kids, or if you can recommend us to someone, you can do it. Just click here and you can try our consultations yourself. And that's all about our work. I think you can implement something in your communities and in your work, in your countries. And thank you. Oh, I have 2 minutes. Maybe you have some questions.
Thank you so much, Liv. And thank you so much for the wonderful work that you and your organization is doing in Ukraine. It's really so amazing what you are achieving. I am going to go to questions now. So let's see. I know that there was still a question actually to myself, but Alma, I thought perhaps you would be able to address this question, and that is whether you can talk a bit about variations of sex development and how treatments need to be adjusted to their conditions. That was the question that was posed to myself. Then there was also, okay?
No, I assume that refers to specifically in menopause. So that the variations in sex development, there's many different ones, and I don't know how much data there is on that. I think what we do in clinical practice is that we address a person's hormonal needs when they are very young already, and that when you work in a system where you have to terminate hormonal therapy at a certain age due to the guidelines in that system, these people often end up having their hormones terminated, but in at the age of 50, at the age of 60 or something like that. But we because we see the same in gender diverse populations as well, that in some guidelines that make people stop hormones at a certain age when there would be natural cessation of hormones. But I think that's a rights issue. I think that people have the right to remain on their chosen hormones until a very late age. So as long as they want, basically. So that is what I would hope happens to people in practice.
Thank you, Alma. And then the following questions actually about, I know a few people commented in the chat box as well about the vaginal dosage of testosterone. There were questions about that, and can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so it depends on what you have available. If you have a registered product for females available in your country, if you are one of the lucky few, like in Australia, then you use the registered product. And then the actual amount is not what is important. It is activating the receptors. So I do not know what the milliliters that was used in each one of these studies that Linda referred to. But typically what you will have is either 0.5% or 1% commercially available, or then compounded. And for the vaginal application, you really actually need a very small amount. So I can show you here. I'm in my office, and I'll tell a person to literally just use that much, but rub it in very thoroughly. Take like 2 minutes to rub it into the external vulva and then into the vagina like that, and at the bottom as well. So it doesn't have to be a large amount. If you're trying to reach systemic volumes of testosterone systemic levels, then you need to go according to the dose. And with this particular one, it's like that much to reach a desired level, and then of course you adjust the level, you adjust the amount according to the levels, which is also contentious because the machines aren't really made to monitor levels in women. But if you do decide to give testosterone, you just need to check a level for safety purposes, because some women don't absorb, some absorb but don't metabolize, and then you can get supraphysiological levels.
Thank you so much, Alma. There are more questions for you, but I'm not sure whether we will get to them, and I just want to ask a question to Libeth, because a question came in for her as well. The question to you, Libeth, is how do you think we can reach teenage boys more?
Oh, it's a very hard question, to be honest, because we are trying to do it ourselves, and we try to make our content more, relevant for boys. So use more topic that's interesting for them, and also use more just like boys' faces on our social medias, and also the best way, like for now, for us to reach out to boys is to go directly into schools, into different studying programs where we can find these boys, and like this we can reach to them, because sometimes we can see that they know that it's important, like these topics, but sometimes they can just make some jokes about it, and like they understand maybe deeply themselves, but like in reality sometimes they just make jokes and make fun of it. And it's very important, because girls, like sexual health is not only important for women, it is also very important. It's not just need for a woman, but for a boy either. And so schools for now is the best option for us, and for you, I think so.
Thank you. Alma, I think we can squeeze in one last question. Does infertility treatment impact the timeline of menopause?
I think that we have some evidence on that, and as I said, I'm not a fertility specialist, but it also, of course, depends on what the intervention was that you received. The ovarian drilling versus just doing insemination that actually didn't contain any hormones will have a difference. And what we do see is that there is, if people who are hormonally more sensitive do also tend to have more symptoms when they go into menopause. So if you reacted quite poorly to the hormones that you received in your fertility treatment, then there's a little bit of a bigger risk of having more significant symptoms when you enter into menopause. Surgical procedures also, but it's not dramatic, and we always have to just individualize care. We're not going to put any woman just under the same blanket. And if a woman starts to develop symptoms that look like menopause, we have to have more of a supportive and a high index of suspicion for that, and not only react to when their menstruation stops, because many women who go into menopause do not menstruate anymore for various reasons. So we do no longer just use menstruation as a way to diagnose menopause.
Yes, thank you so much, and thanks today to all our wonderful panelists. I think this was such a wonderful webinar. I mean, I enjoyed it so much, and I think for all women, and celebrate